Hey guys, welcome back to some more reviews. The Explorer of Horror here, the Horror Boy. And I know you guys are probably like, Nate, what are you doing? You've already reviewed these movies. Well, I did review these movies before, but to be honest, I wasn't really. I don't hate the reviews. It's just, it had bad audio and bad video, and also I kept on repeating myself over and over and over again, and I just wasn't really pleased with the reviews. I mean, out of both of these franchises that I'm going to be reviewing this October, there was maybe a handful of videos I was okay with. The rest were just kind of either cringy or I'm not really. I'll leave them up. I'll leave them up for you guys to check them out. But some of these franchises I did back in the 2015, 16, and 17, I wasn't really. I'm not really pleased with the reviews. They're not horrible. They're just bad quality, and there's movies in these franchises that I don't hate anymore, that I don't do rants on anymore, that I think are actually decent films or okay movies. But besides that, also just wanted to cover them again. I was really excited to, and the bad quality and review, the problems with the review were kind of just the excuses I found. Like, well, if I'm not really the most pleased with those reviews, might as well just cover these movies again, so you guys will be getting better quality. And just, I'm going to try and make these reviews a little bit more better. Because in those reviews, I was kind of slugging. I was being slow with the reviews. And I don't know. They're okay reviews. But, overall, I just, wanted to redo the reviews. But they're going to still be up. So you guys can still check them out. I'm still going to put them on the playlist and everything like that. But these are the new reviews. But two franchises I want to cover this October is Friday the 13th and Halloween. And I'll be reviewing Friday the 13th first, which is why we're starting up with the first movie today. And then I'll be reviewing the later movies, Halloween movies later on. And before we get started with the review on the first Friday the 13th, I kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of a summary of my, thoughts on Friday the 13th and, the history of Friday the 13th with me. I remember growing up, going to Blockbuster. This is crazy thinking about Blockbuster not being around anymore, or Hollywood Video, or any of those really classic. I remember there was a dollar theater by the Blockbuster that I used to go to, and that's gone too, so it's kind of, mind-boggling to think about that. But I went to Blockbuster one day, and I seen Friday the 13th there, part 1. Rented it, seen it, loved it. Went back, got part 2 and 3, watched them, loved both movies, and then years later on the AMC Fear Fest, if any of you guys remember that with George Romero as the host, on the AMC Fear Fest they were having, these horror franchises, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, Friday the 13th. And when I got on, it was the ending of part 4, and then I watched part 5, and I don't think I watched part 6 all the way. I might have watched a little bit of it, but I mainly just watched part 5. And part 5 is my favorite to this day. Still a big fan of it. Luckily, it has gotten a cult following, but it took a while for that to happen. I remember doing reviews on it and being in discussion boards and stuff like that, and people saying, "Well, why do you like that movie better than any other movies?" But we'll get to that. We'll talk about that when we get to part 5. But yeah, man, Friday the 13th is just one of my favorite horror film franchises of all time. I don't know if I would say this or Texas Chainsaw Massacre is my favorite franchise. I don't know. I'm leaning towards this in some ways, and then in other ways towards Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I just love those movies. But yeah, big fan. Grew up with them. I also watched Jason X a lot growing up. That was, honestly, that was one of my favorite movies, believe it or not, as a kid, was Jason X and The Matrix and some other great movies, Blade. But today we're talking about the very first film, Friday the 13th. Now, this is part of the box set, which is the From Crystal Lake to Manhattan box set, which is kind of old. I mean, these DVDs were made, I think, way back in the day, maybe the early 2000s. But it's convenient. You have them all in a big box set. One day I do hope that, I can get a Blu-ray box set. But for right now, this works perfectly. It has features and everything like that. Not only do you have features on the actual movies, but you also have a bonus disc, which is full of features. So for right now, it'll do. But one day down the road, I do want to pick up a Blu-ray set. Same with Chucky, I want to pick up a Bluray set, and I run on shoot Blu-ray set. But Friday the 13th in 1980 is a 6.5 on IMDb, and of course is directed by Sean S. Cunningham. Now, Sean S. Cunningham worked with Wes Craven, The Last House on the Left. I think Sean S. Cunningham was the producer of that movie, or the writer. I think he was the producer. I think Wes Craven wrote the movie. He wrote and directed, but Sean S. Cunningham was the producer. And I know that him and Wes Craven were really good friends. And then after Last House on the Left, he went on to go make a couple of basically kids movies, soccer pictures, stuff like that didn't do so well. So him and his, crew was talking about what they're going to do next, and he's like, well, I'll make a scary movie. And thus, he made Friday the 13th, made a bunch of advertisements for it, and I believe Paramount just picked it up. And the difference between this and other horror films is that Paramount didn't treat it like a traditional horror film, because back in the day, horror films didn't get too much hype. You had your occasional hits like Halloween and, The Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Psycho was a very well done as far as promotion goes. Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. But back then, it was only in very few cases when studios wanted to push your movies out there. And Paramount seen profit in this. They seen the concept, the title. They didn't even have a script yet, I believe. They just had a title. And they showed it to Paramount. Paramount loves it. And then Paramount just gave them these ads everywhere. Newspapers, trailers, TV spots, everywhere. Radio spots. The movie was everywhere. So it was bound to do very well. And I know that when it came out, it dethroned The Empire Strikes Back, which is something that Adam Marcus touches on Jason X. There's a documentary on there called The Many Faces of Jason Voorhees, which is a really good documentary. If you haven't seen that, it's really, really good. But, yeah, man, it knocked The Shining out of the ranks. It knocked Star Wars out of the way. It was the movie of its time. And it was in the theaters for months. This is how big this movie was. And really, Halloween, they even said Victor Miller, the writer, even said that this is a ripoff of Halloween. It was made to be a ripoff. That's what he was told to write. Or I believe he was the one who, I don't know if it's he that came up with it or somebody else said, make this like Halloween. But basically, I think it was him. He went and seen Halloween, took some notes. All right, we got teens that can't be rescued by the police, so it's put in a summer camp. A slasher is taking them out one by one. There's nudity, there's drugs, and mayhem. Blood, boobs, and mayhem. And basically, making that basic formula. And when you released, I think what it is, and this is a very popular thing with this movie, is that Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Psycho, turned the knob on the door. Texas Chainsaw Massacre pushed the door open. Black Christmas as well pushed the door open a little bit more. Halloween, the door is almost open, but it's like halfway there almost. And Friday the 13th blew the door off of its hinges. And it just gave loose to this flood, this wave of slasher films in the 1980s. And you had some great ones come out of it. My Bloody Valentine is a great movie. The Burning, Sleepaway Camp 1 and 2 and 3, they're great movies. I liked The Prowler. I thought that was a decent movie. Terror Train was okay. It was alright. Solder High I liked. There's Plenty of In Pieces I really enjoyed. That was a fun little slasher film. What else? I believe that's all that's coming to my mind right now. But yeah, a lot of great slasher films are coming out in the 80s. And you got some great classics. And then from like 1980 to like 84 were some great slashers coming out. And the basic plot of this movie, you have the beginning of the movie. These two teens are making out, and one of them gets killed. And you have that great shot of a zoom in on the girl's face. It fades to white, and the title shoot towards the camera. I kind of wish they would make that, because like after the first 5 or so movies, the intros were not like that anymore. They were They were different. They were still really cool, but I like the ones where they're shooting in, and part two's explodes, and part three's comes out of the eyes, and part four's explodes, and five explodes. A lot of explosions in these titles. It's pretty epic. But yeah, these murders happen to begin the movie. It's years later. Um, these camp counselors are at Crystal Lake. You have Kevin Bacon in the cast. You have Adrienne King as our lead, which is one of my favorite leads in the series. I think she does a great job. And while they're there, they're doing typical things, being teenagers, playing strip Monopoly. Some of them go off and have sex, smoke dope, and there is a killer there killing people. Very basic plot, and this would inspire films after it so much. And you would even have, in later movies, the same characters. Even in the sequels, you had the same beats from the first movie. Like in part 2 and part 3. Part 3, there's a scene where a girl gets impaled through her neck with a knife. Kind of like in this movie, where Kevin Bacon is laying there and gets an arrow through the neck. And it's bloody and it's gory. It's very well done. But yeah, like it inspired like character types, that whole idea of teens going to an area and getting picked off one by one. Just, you know, very well done. And the formula has been done multiple times in the future after the first Friday the 13th. But you have a lot of great stuff to the first Friday the 13th. This is definitely easily one of my favorites. Like the first 5 movies, I think are fantastic. All 5 of them are great. You know, some of them have problems, but all 5 of the first movies I just absolutely adore and love. And even after part 5, like part 6 is pretty good, part 9 is pretty good in my opinion. Even part 7 is okay. But those first 5 movies I think are just fantastic films. And I think what people don't ever touch on in this movie is the fact that the atmosphere in this movie is so well done. Like, you buy and believe it's this camp, and it seems real, and the atmosphere of nature, and there being a score there, obviously, but it feels like in later movies there was more of a score. Like in every single scene there's a score. And in this movie it's more of, Harry Manfredini even said he wanted to make a score every time you see Mrs. Voorhees. And I'm not going to say spoiler alert because the movie is 34 years old. So if you haven't seen Friday the 13th yet, what have you been doing? Go see Friday the 13th right now. But Harry Manfredini even said you don't hear no music until you see Mrs. Voorhees or the killer just roaming around. That's the time you get the score. Everything else is just shot on location, looks great. And nobody mentions how the night sequences in this movie are creepy. It's heavy rain, but yet it doesn't, and that's the thing. In later movies in the series, it looked like a set, didn't look quite real. Maybe it was real, but it was fake rain. This just seemed, it had that perfect balance of, and also in later movies, it looked more movie, where there's perfect lighting, perfect rain, la. But in this movie, it felt legit. Like it was this dark, rainy atmosphere that I thought. And there's also a scene in this movie nobody talks about, where this character, she goes out into the rain because she hears a kid. And I don't even know how Mrs. Voorhees would make this voice, because it sounded like a little kid saying, "Help me, I'm drowning, help." And I believe the girl, was it Brenda? I think it was Brenda. But she goes out there, she's got a lantern, and it's dark and rainy, and she's trying to figure out where the kid is. And you hear the kid screaming, "Help, help me." And then the lights get turned on, and she's in the middle of that archery range. Just really great, man. Great scene, great build up. I also like Crazy Ralph. "Going to Camp Blood, ain't ya? We're all doomed." That great, which has also been done later on in other films as well. Not only in the Friday the 13th franchise, but in other slasher films. They kind of have that doom character, that guy who goes, "You're all doomed," and this kind of foreboding warning to the character has been done later on. So yeah, Friday the 13th, I think it's just a thing where the rest of the series got so much more bigger. It's like Sleepaway Camp. Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 just blow the first Sleepaway Camp away, because later sequels just gotten bigger and better and bigger and better. But absolutely love the first movie because from the score to the atmosphere to the camera work to the characters, they're likable characters. You know, Adrian Keene is Alice. The Marcy character, Annie, Jack, Bill, Brenda, Ned. Ned's this kind of jokester guy. Great cast of characters. You care about them all. They're typical, but they're not annoying. You know, they're just basic teens, and you enjoyed them. It was cool seeing Kevin Bacon in his first, if not his first role, one of his first roles. But yeah, the cast is great. Great atmosphere. Some awesome death scenes. You have a girl getting her throat slit, an axe to the face, Tom Savini doing effects. You have when trying to think how it goes, where Adrian King goes into this room and the door turns, and it's this guy with arrows in his eye and his head and his neck and chest up on the door. Very, very well done scene. You have a lot of quick cut death scenes or off screen deaths, but those don't really matter because really the movie does a great job with pacing. It seems like a dark movie, like in a good way. Some great camera work, some great direction, and a great third act. I definitely think the first Friday the 13th films have great third acts, where Adrian King meets Betsy Palmer. Rest in peace, Betsy Palmer does a great job with Mrs. Voorhees. She comes in, you know, has that great scene. Did you know a young boy drowned here in the lake? And in that great scene where she reveals that she's crazy and she's killed these people, and she, you know, beats up Adrian King. Adrian King runs. You get a lot of back and forth, them runs in the woods. Some great shot of the moon. But yet you get Betsy Palmer saying, "Kill her, mommy. Kill her." Great stuff. Really awesome stuff. And get the movie's ending where Adrian King and her fight on the beach, and she gets a machete and decapitates Betsy Palmer. And that great classic slow-mo shot. The head pops off. The hands come up with hairy palms because Tonto Savini's assistant in that movie was the hands, so he had hairy palms. So it's like, why does she have hairy palms? It's weird. But yeah, and you have the ending, which is the Carrie ending supposedly, but I thought this movie did it very, very well. Very, very well. And I love the music in that scene. That's one of my favorite pieces of music from horror history, is that ending song. And even in part 2, when they recreate that scene, different music, different tone, it doesn't really feel that effective. But in this movie, it feels great. Because great shot, you think it's over. She's on the canoe going. The cops are on the shore. There's space for the credits. And that infamous scene that I think cemented Friday the 13th in film history is where Jason comes up, grabs her, pulls her back down into the water. And from that point on, the Jason craze began. And you had him being cemented as an icon. So I think the franchise started off fantastic. I mean, there's some great sequels in here. Part 5 is my favorite, but Part 1 is easily one of my favorite horror films ever. The first 5 movies, get that, first 5 movies in this franchise are some of my favorite horror films of all time. That is an achievement, because I can't think of another franchise, even Halloween, it's like, yeah, Halloween 1, 2, 3, and 4, maybe. But Halloween 5, I can't say it's one of my favorite horror films of all time. Nightmare on Elm Street, 1 and 2 and 3, but I can't say 4 and 5 are my favorite horror films of all time. Even if I say Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1, 2, and 3 are some of my favorite horror films. 4 is not really, and then the remake is pretty good, but yeah, but Friday the 13th, has a great first 5 movies, and the first movie goes unnoticed, but I just want to say that I am so excited to talk about these movies again, and I can't wait to get into the sequels. But yeah, the first movie is classic. You have great death scenes, decent characters, some decent acting, great score, great atmosphere. The atmosphere, I think, is something that nobody ever touches on in these movies, or at least the first movie. The first movie has a fantastic, flawless atmosphere that I loved. But yeah, very, very solid movie. Great first film. I love Friday the 13th Part 1. But, anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review on Friday the 13th. And I'll see you guys later on for my review of Friday the 13th Part 2. The body count continues. So, anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review. And I'll see you guys later. The Explorer of Horror is out. Happy October, guys!